This is Khalid Malik's Morning Jam on FM91. We are streaming live on FM91.com.pk and super excited because our brand new segment kickstarts right now today. Green Hour, where we put the lens on green initiatives throughout this month. We are talking women empowerment. Today we're talking women in energy. Before I introduce my guest for our first installment of Green Hour, when we look at globally, we look at organizations globally, that we have these buzzwords that seem to fly around. It used to be innovation and entrepreneurship, and that's still around. And in recent times, it's been diversity and words like inclusion and diversity. But one organization that has really taken this to heart is K Electric. And we're going to be talking about their Roshni Baji initiative, which is in line with the 5th Sustainable Development Goal that was put out by the UN. And why is that important? Because we're talking about ending all forms of discrimination against women and girls everywhere. To talk about this and other green initiatives, joining us this morning, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, K Electric, Sadia Dada. Good morning, Sadia, and welcome to Green Hour.
Hi, Khalid. Good morning to you too.
Thank you. So I wanted to start off with those buzzwords before we get into this, the 5th Sustainable Development Goal, etc., and the initiative and other green initiatives that K Electric is working on. Diversity and inclusion, as I said, they're buzzwords, organizationally speaking. Why is it so important to K Electric?
Diversity and inclusion are buzzwords, but not at K Electric.
Yeah.
And they're important for everybody across society, which is why they've made it to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. If we want to progress as a country, as a planet, women have to be at the front and center. Yeah. So it's actually no longer even diversity and inclusion. It's pretty much inclusion, because women are now part of this dialogue. It's a 100-year-old struggle, but I think we're seeing a lot of fruit. And today nobody asked this question, why is it important? It's more like how soon, can we get this rolling? So at K Electric, we feel that, we serve the city of Karachi. That's 50-50, so half our customer base is female, and if you do not have their perspective with us, and if you do not have access to them, then we're losing out. And no business should be losing out purely because they don't have that gender lens on.
Yeah. We talk about, we will talk about women in energy and generally women in the workforce. There's a lot of bias. And we talk about breaking that bias. What kind of bias did you perhaps experience, in your career, in your career path? You've had quite an illustrious career and continue to do so. But what are some of the biases you've come across? And I want to sort of use it as a segue into the Roshni Baji initiative.
So, there are biases, and I've worked with some really good companies. I actually come from a place of privilege. I went to a good college.
Yeah.
I have no mobility issues as such, per se. But, it's about age. It's about perception. If you're ambitious, you're labeled as too aggressive. If you're, willing to put in the long hours, you don't care for your family.
Right.
If you're not willing to put in long hours, look, she's not serious.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of stuff, and, no matter which way you go, you'll end up getting something. And by the way, progressing amongst this bias, it's like, I don't know how she got there. So,
really?
Yeah, it happens. It's pervasive, but it's getting better. And I think the more and more women join the workplace and workforce, it is going to get better.
Yeah. As we talk about women in the workforce, and we talk about the Roshni Baji initiative, we talked about breaking the bias. Now, the Roshni Baji initiative, as we said, is in line with the 5th Sustainable Development Goal put out by the UN. Can you tell us a little bit about the goal and how Roshni Baji initiative ties in with that?
So, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and there are about 17 of them. They talk about the fact that women have to be front and center. So It talks about that all women should have access to education. So education for the girl child, higher education, STEM education, and equal and equitable access to every opportunity. The underlying philosophy is that every female everywhere should have the right to choose a life that she values and she wants to lead. So it should be her choice. It shouldn't be imposed upon her. Now, whether that choice is to be at home and raise a family, or to go to work and pursue a career of her choice. That's what it really honestly means. And I think at the bottom of it is the choice part, which I think in a lot of cultures is still not entirely in the hands of the female. So essentially in a lot of cultures, including ours,
well, in our part of the world in particular,
women are not in the driving seat when it comes to what they want to do in life, whether they want to study engineering or medicine, and when they do study that, whether they should be able to continue and pursue a professional career or not exactly in their hands, which is where the bias comes in.
Yeah, and so hence the Roshni Baji initiative. Can you tell us about that program?
So when we put that program together, we had one simple agenda. So it actually started with the fact that, as a business, we have a lot of accidents that happen in the real world. A lot of them can be mitigated if there's basic safety awareness. So people were not very cognizant of the fact that you shouldn't be walking around barefoot and touching electrical appliances. And that leads to a burn, injury, and even a fatality. So it started off as an awareness program. Now when we realized that in our part of the world, I talked about the fact that there's certain cultural norms that prevail. So you have a lot of women at home. So when a male knocks on that door, not exactly receptive to those messages. So we said, let's work with women, and it's an understanding we took from the polio initiative, where they've also had a lot of women to do the jobs, because it's a child that they're dealing with, the mother at home during the day, and that's how it started. And it really changed our perspective. We realized that before this, we had no idea, about what the women who consume our electricity, what do they think, what do they want, what are their needs, and what are their pain points. So it sort of started evolving into a program which is larger and goes beyond the ambit of safety. And it's really a bridge where we're building a bridge with our female customers through our female employees. We started with about 40 Roshni Bajis, and we thought, there's dropout. 2020, 19? When? In 2020, last year. And we thought that 2021. And we thought there'd be dropouts, not all of them would want to do it. It's a lot of walking, you have to do about, 5 households per hour. So to explain to them what, the messaging is, you have to be able to get inside. Not everybody wants to talk to a stranger. And then these are neighborhoods, which is, Liari, Kurangi, Malir. So you're underprivileged areas, a lot of choti galiyan, and there is a lot of walking that you need to do. At the end of the program, we had no dropouts, and this year we added 60 more. So there's a total strength of 100 women who've been part of this program to date,
and growing.
When
the initiative, first kick-started, you had your first recruits as well, and trainees, and now on the field. What was some? I'm sure there must have been resistance, even as the women enrolled themselves into the initiative. How did you deal with those resistance, and what were some of the?
So our learning actually started a couple of years earlier when we started hiring female meter readers. And there's a lot of discussion and debate internally. Where will we find these women? Nobody wants to do all that walking and stuff. And we said, let's find them and let's ask them if they want to. Because we've got so many women doing these roles. Khalid, gender roles and gender biases are here in the brain, right? So they're between your ears, and you sort of have these preconceived notions about people, and you sort of apply them to the entire race. Now, to look at who's making these decisions, it's people, and they're exposed to a certain kind of gender group, so they assume that it applies to the entire gender. So we sat down, and then when these women joined, they made their own routes. They found their own solutions, and by the way, some of them were better than the ones that were being deployed by their male counterparts. So we learned from there, and then when these women came in, they're like, how much will we have to do, what are our support mechanisms? And more than the bias, it's what facilities that exist. So mobility is a huge challenge. Safety is a big concern. And we started building, and when we started talking to them, and we meet them very regularly, we started plugging those in. So
so my mobility, my personal safety, etc. Correct?
So we gave them training in self-defense, all of them. We taught them how to ride their bikes. Some of them are now doing their own. So they've taken care of their own mobility, because public transport is also not equipped to take a heavy influx of women in the workforce. The numbers are going to grow. You need to have all of these solutions. So it was a learning for us, and also an inspiration. I mean, the importance of flexibility in timings at every level of the job is important. And we started making those changes so that we could get more and more. For the second cohort, by the way, for the first cohort, we had to go out. We had to look for these women. We had to ask around. Word of mouth is very important.
Right.
You would be surprised. Our recruitment policies, and this goes for all corporates, by the way, are not designed to gear women. You'll find men, their number and their contact information is available. Again, cultural norms prevail.
Right.
It's a bit difficult to get in touch with a female, and if she doesn't know who it's for, she's probably not going to either answer or attend that phone call, because we've all had terrible experiences with pranksters, right?
Yeah.
So all of that, but for the second cohort, the word of mouth was so good that we had 400 applications.
Wow. That came in.
Yes.
Cold. That knew about the program.
Yes.
You didn't have to go searching for them,
Nope.
but they came to you.
So when you do something right, that shows us that we were doing something right.
Right.
We were adding value.
Yeah.
And these women are enjoying the work that they do.
Yeah.
So it's not just that they start off as safety ambassadors, they do the door-to-door program, and then they get inducted so they can become electricians.
Right.
And all 40 of them opted for that training. So we've got 40 women who know now how to
Certified
change.
electricians, by the way.
Yes. So I say, how many men does it take to change a light bulb? Don't need them now.
Just very quickly though, the Roshni initiative, Roshni Baji initiative, and the program. So how long is the actual training?
So it's about 4 weeks of training,
4
and
weeks
then they
of
go in the field.
Okay.
But we keep meeting them regularly, and it's not just training about the safety messages. We teach them how to use cell phones,
Right.
how to leverage WhatsApp.
Yeah.
There's digital and financial training. we train them how to handle their finances, and there is bike riding training. There's self-defense because they're out in the field. So what to do in case of safety. And there's a little bit of technical training as well.
I'm curious. So obviously, it's a field that's been dominated by men.
Yes.
Not for a couple of years, but for decades. And now you have women entering the field. How did you, explain it to the men now? Listen, there's a new team out there, and so help them. Or was there resistance there? And if so, how did you overcome that resistance?
So look, the first step is always the hardest.
Yeah.
When I joined K Electric, and this was back in 2016, we had about 40 men in the leadership. I was the only one. And then I started sort of putting this thought and idea into everybody's head, and they were receptive. Thank God for the UN. They put it there in their goals. So it was an easy pitch to work on. The narrative has been sort of perfected over the years. So the first step, when we took the first step, and I give full credit to the first 3 women meter readers that we hired in this male-dominated space.
Yeah.
Shahida, she's my favorite. Shumaila.
Why is she a favorite?
Because she's the one who got up and she said, I'll do it.
Huh.
And she showed up and she said, I'll do it. And there's this one thing that when you hire a single female, only is lonely. So we said, we'll hire 3. Let's see how it goes. And they were their own support network. So they got together, they shared their learnings, they shared their, lunch menus, and they started doing things differently. And then everybody started to take notice. It's always harder on the women, you have to prove yourself a lot more. You have to, sort of work a lot harder to have the same impact and appreciation that, everybody else gets and takes for granted. But once they started, then the appetite of the organization grew, and I kept getting asked, but what else can we do? What else can we do? We started with 3, and now we're
100 now almost.
We've got 100 Roshni Bajis. We've got 5 grid operators. There was this question somebody asked. Grid operations, may you have to lift a lot of heavy weights. Trolleys weigh as much as 200 kgs, and how will we do it? We innovated. We added wheels to them. And then, these women are doing it. So we've got 5 grid service operators. We've got many more women in the meter reading department, and they're growing every single day. Then we've got 100 of these Roshni Bajis. So once you get on the bandwagon, then you don't get off, because you can see the benefits, the difference, the impact, and the productivity that they bring. And you have to understand, when you bring in women, you're actually impacting an entire family. They go back and, they spend on their family, they spend on their nutrition, on their education. They don't go buying fancy watches and cars. They spend it on things that really matter. So you're actually uplifting a whole family, a whole community, to put it. Just do it in numbers, and then you can see that their own support network. Yes, people had their preconceived notions.
Yeah.
People had biases. But now everybody's like, yes. It's okay, and women can do it.
Nice. And I want to sort of get back to gender mainstreaming. And is there gender mainstreaming across K Electric?
Yes. So we've got women participating at all levels. So we've
Yeah.
got about 400 women in different managerial roles. We've got 2 women in the leadership, including myself, and we've got the fantastic Naz Khan. She drives the strategy, innovation, and IT at K Electric.
Yes.
When we go to the lower echelon, so it's not just about sort of positioning women in a particular role. So we've got at every level of the organization, we've got female directors leading functions. Our talent and organizational development is led by a female. Marketing is run by a female, Noor Afshar. And then you've got, as you keep going down at every level, we've started putting in targets and goals and KPIs for each leader to make sure that there is representation of women across the board at all levels.
Yeah.
And as you keep going down layer by layer at the more operational level, particularly in the field, we found that to be an area where the numbers are large, but the female representation was non-existent. So we started putting women in those roles, and they're coming back and letting us know what changes we need to make as an organization to make sure that more and more women can apply. One very interesting initiative is, and I'll go back to the fact where, a lot of women are also hesitant, right? They don't know what the outside world is like, what opportunities exist, and whether they can cope with it or not. So we've got a returnship drive, which allows women who have taken a break from their careers to raise their families, which is an important thing as well. And then once, the kids are a bit older, they can, sort of take care of their own needs, these women want to come back into the workspace. So we've got a returnship drive. So we have about 7 women who have come back. One who's had, a career break for 10 years. And she was heading marketing at Samsung, if I'm not mistaken. And now she's working with us at K Electric. And she says this has really sort of changed the way that she felt, because the workplace is advanced and she had a lot of fears and biases.
And 10 years is a long
hesitation.
time. Be away from
and
the
then we're
workforce.
helping her come back to the workforce.
Yeah.
It's a flexible approach, so she can choose her hours and she can make her day and figure out, because you can't just immediately withdraw from your family as well. There's a lot of guilt. So you need to create these models that help women come back.
The fact that these models exist even here in Pakistan, in the corporate landscape, I haven't heard of, but that's amazing.
It's something that we need to do a lot more of. They exist. A lot of companies are now doing this, but it needs to be done a lot more of. And I think the numbers really need to pick up.
Does K Electric have a solar energy program to help women economically? But now that government of Sindh and we're sort of going solar.
So we have a partnership with Akhuwat Foundation. Dr. Amjad Saqib is one of the most philanthropic Pakistanis out there, and he's doing some great work. So we have a partnership with them, and this is endorsed by NEPRA, our power regulator. And I must mention the fact that the regulator in this case also has a very, very significant role to play. The Roshni Baji initiative in its entirety is endorsed by NEPRA. And again, the solar initiative that we're doing, where we are facilitating, so there's a grant, it's a revolving fund of sorts. And men, women, and persons with senior citizens or persons with disabilities can apply for these grants and move to solar powered solutions. This sort of brings down their solar bill. K Electric also has a subsidiary which is now providing solar solutions, and that's applicable across Pakistan. So we're working on creating access to clean energy and affordable energy solutions as well. That's also, by the way, again, something that is covered in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So the blueprint is out there for anyone who wants to make a difference to follow.
And those programs are in place at K Electric for these women who want to maybe either sort of transition to where they are now or get in.
So,
solar energy.
Some of these people are in far-flung areas where the grid cannot be extended, or it's too costly to take it there because they live in pockets. So we're encouraging them to go solar through this Akhuwat revolving fund. A solar panel, while yes, it's become more affordable in the past few years, it's still out of reach for a lot of people, particularly in underprivileged societies who probably need it the most.
I was just speaking, and I can certainly obviously sense your passion, and as I sit across from you, and as I'm sure you're listening, you can sense it also with Sadia Dada. But I obviously through what I do, I meet men and women who were in the workforce and have left, as you said, for family, they left, and some women who come back after the child is of age, or they've got some help, and then they'll come back, and then they'll be like, after a couple of months, I just won't, or whatever those pressures might be. But what, as someone who's an advocate for this, and I see you more as a mentor for women that really have these inner resistances also, what would you perhaps say to them could be a starting point if they are, I don't know, in a place of utter confusion and guilt, as you said as well, because they've got a family? What would you advise? It's a heavy question. What would you say to them?
It's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
So there are three things. One, yes, I know this is, women hour, and we're shining the light on women. Men leave too. I mean, they go to pursue their higher education. I know over the years, I've lost a lot of my male colleagues to Canada. I've not stopped hiring men, first of all. So, yes, we're allowed to have our confusions. We're allowed to make those choices. It's about creating an environment that allows people to choose the life that they value. And if somebody puts a greater value on a particular thing and not on the other, let's not take that single experience or solo experience and apply it on the entire gender.
Across the board, right.
That's all. That's all it says. So yes, you will be confused. Not all women who explore returnship drives continue to go on to corporate careers. There's also the ability, and the learning for us is, what will it take to make them work? So they want to work, perhaps we're not giving them what they need. So when you look at flexible timings, why does the office be 9 to 5? Does it have to be 9 to 5? Can she choose her own hours? Can she do reduced hours? Does it have to be a full-time job? If now in the modern day workplace, we've got KPIs, everybody's got those metrics and systems, and you can log a particular task and an outcome-based goal in your system, and then it's about achieving that goal, whether you achieve that at 8 a.m. in the morning, whether you're doing it before or after your school run, after you put your kids to bed. So a lot of organizations are exploring with that, where women can also block certain hours in their day, and then maybe put those hours in later. So it's about flexibility, it's about options, and it's about saying, all of these things we're doing. A lot of organizations still don't have daycares and lactation rooms. So, maybe if you made those things available, more and more women will be able to come to work. You have to understand, Khalid, that the workforce and the corporate, every single form of work was, by virtue of the fact that it was mostly men doing it, it's designed for men. So we need to sort of take that design, not tear it apart, but at least take
expand
a look at it. Put on the gender lens and look at it. Is this, if a female want to do it, and the same goes for inclusion. By the way, today we're looking at the fact that if you have elevators and ramps, it makes the workplace more accessible, and there's no harm in making a workforce more accessible, allowing everybody an equal and equitable chance to work there. And then if they don't choose to, it's their choice. Don't hold it against them.
Before we end, and I would like for you to address the men also, but before we go there, we're looking at expanding the Roshni Baji initiative.
So we're already in the second cohort. So the second cohort expanded. It ends in July. We've got an international partner, Garant, who is also supporting this initiative, and we're in conversation with them. They're going to be here next week to meet the Roshni Bajis, and we were going to talk about a phase 3.
Phase 3. And I should point out that the initiative has been recognized internationally also.
Yes, we won the S&P Global Platts Energy Award.
Yes.
It's sort of the Oscars of the energy sector, and no company from Pakistan's ever won before. So that was a really good feeling. Was up in New York picking up that award, and everybody was very inspired by the Roshni Bajis. The Roshni Bajis were, by the way, at the Dubai Expo at the Pakistan Pavilion, talking about their experiences. So again, there's a lot of recognition for this program, and we're hoping that not just from K Electric, but other companies will also do similar programs and bring more women into their workforce.
Before we let you go, and I want to take this opportunity because you've got so much experience, and I'd like for you to address the men, and in particular men who have talented partners in their life who perhaps are in the workforce, who are wanting to return to the workforce, but there's some resistance only because of a program that has been running in our society for decades and decades. And what would you say to the men who are perhaps in sort of caught in that program?
So look, I mean, I'm not going to paint men with a broad stroke. There are all kinds of men. So there are men in different stages of their lives. Some who are parents. To the men who are parents, please raise your children the same way and be a lot less critical of your daughters, because there's a lot of resistance that we have to face at home. So we don't have the same amount of cheerleading that most men have. So be that cheerleader. So from the parenting perspective, if you're if you're in the romantic age and you're looking for a life partner, sit down with her and understand her aspirations and her conversations. If you think that that aspiration doesn't match with your idea, don't go into that partnership. So it's a conversation that you all should have with the person that we're going for. This applies for both men and women on each side. Have that conversation. Are you going to work after you get married? A lot of who I am is because I have a very supportive partner at home, who, by the way, him and we had a conversation before we got married that this is what my plan is, this is how much I want to work. My job is taxing. I can't put in 12-14 hour work days if I did not have a supportive family. So bring that support network in. So for women, create that buy-in, and for the men and elders of the family, provide that network and support, and let women make their choices. It's okay to make the wrong choices sometimes. It's okay to make mistakes. You won't learn if nobody lets you make those mistakes. So the men, let them make some mistakes, and to the women, feel free to make mistakes and do things that make you happy. You could misfire every now and then, but then it's okay, you will learn.
Love it. Words of wisdom, absorb them. We did it. Green Hour, thanks very much. Thank you, Sadia Dada, for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for doing this, Khalid. Really commendable that you're doing this.
Thank you once again. Sadia Dada, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, K Electric. Our first installment of Green Hour. All month this month, we're talking women in the workforce. We're talking women empowerment. This has been Green Hour. This is FM91. I'll catch you tomorrow. May your news be good news.
FM91 presents Green Hour on Khalid Malik's Morning Jam. Watch the episodes on digital platforms of FM91, News 1 and TV 1.